episode of The Shift is sponsored by the Ultimate Faith Store. This store carries faith-based apparel and accessories for men, women, and children. To purchase an item from the Ultimate Faith Store, please use the link attached to this episode and use the code JCamille for 10% off. Now, back to the episode, Jay. Welcome to The Shift, a podcast here to help you adjust to the new. I'm your host, Jay Camille. If this is your first time watching, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow my Facebook page, and keep up with The Shift on Instagram. This podcast is here to help you get through anything, everything, all things new. Whether it means moving to a new city, starting a new career, getting through a new relationship, or even getting through new tough times such as anxiety and depression. So get ready, get set, and let's shift. See you guys soon. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to The Shift. As you all know, it's your host, Jay Camille, and I just want to thank you all again for tuning in to another episode of The Shift podcast. This season, we are talking about shifting out of shock. So as we know, last year and even part of this year, 2020 and 2021, we went through a pandemic, and a lot of people experienced things physically, but also realized like they were going through things mentally and emotionally, such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, and then physically, such as like job loss, or maybe their situation at home, it might have been abuse. And so in this season, we are talking about helping people shift out of that stuck place because they feel like they may have dealt with those things and then found themselves stuck and not knowing how to get out, how to shift back to the new normal, how to shift back into their purpose and what they're meant to do. And I, for one, am one of those people who went through that myself. And I, since shifting out of shock, would love to help each and every person listening to this podcast get out of that state and to walk into their purpose. So today we are actually talking about helping those shift into purpose, as well as cultivating inner peace and joy. I'm so excited today to bring up an author of a new book. It's called 29 Degrees, and he's going to explain it to us. So I won't give too much detail on it. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to the stage Eric Lee. Eric, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to The Shift.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a personal trainer, stress relief coach, father, and a lot of other things here in Colorado. I was originally born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. So I'm a bit of a convert. I'm a converted city boy. I was a total city boy when I moved here. And then when I got here, the Rocky Mountains just bit me, and I just started mountain biking and hiking and backpacking and fishing and hunting and just being out there and just being in touch with nature and loving it, which is a good way to de-stress, especially if you can work it into your daily routine.
That's true. So, okay, I love the phrase converted city boy, because I feel like me and you, we flipped. So I'm initially kind of like a country girl from like Oklahoma, Midwest area. And then now I'm in Houston. So now I'm a converted city girl. And then, you have you over here on this side that you went from the big city to small town life, comfortable with nature and everything.
Yes, indeed.
I feel like it's definitely way more peaceful.
Well, it is. But, like my book says, inner peace can be found regardless of circumstances. And I just had a visit back to Detroit to visit my family. And it was great being back there. And there's just things going on in the city that aren't outdoors that I miss. And it was good getting back in touch with that side of myself as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So speaking of Detroit, and I kind of want to get into this, and I know I hinted it in your intro. So tell us a little bit about your new book, 29 Degrees, How to Live a Life of Inner Peace, Joy, and Purpose, regardless of circumstances. And I'm really interested about this whole 29 degrees thing. I feel like that has to do with Detroit.
Well, it does, in a sense, have a bit to do with Detroit. And it was one of those things. I was working as a personal trainer at the time, and I still am, but years ago, I had a client. And this was a gentleman who had anything and all the material trappings that you think a person would desire. Nice home, beautiful kids, fancy sports car, actually two of them, and just everything seemed to be going well for him. And I greeted him when he came for a session, and it's like, "How you doing?" And his reply was, "Eric, I'm just sad." And I was taken aback by that. And immediately the metaphor jumped into my mind. It was like, it's almost like some people needed to be 85 and sunny outside for them to be happy. And invariably, being from Detroit or the Midwest, the thermostat's going to read 29 degrees. And at that point, when it's miserable and cold outside, you have an option. You can be miserable and downtrodden about it, or you can cuddle up by a nice fire. You can make a nice hearty soup. You can cuddle up with a loved one. You can go skiing. You can go sledding. You can find all kinds of fun things to do outside. So it struck me as mindset was the driver of all of that. And since that metaphor popped into my mind, and even before that, really, I was on a quest to explore that mindset and go deeper into it to see, how we can turn seemingly bad situations into good. And that led to me just going deeper and deeper and researching and working through it with my clients and working with it with myself and noticing my own personal circumstances that were cold and seeing actually how they helped me and were actually blessings in disguise. And so the book goes into that, and it goes into how to cultivate your mindset in every aspect of life. And I break the chapters into, either relationships or children or job, finances, body image, and all types of different life circumstances and how that principle applies.
That's good. And I really like that you went into depth about your title, because to me, honestly, what I grasped from that is don't let the outside mess up the inside, because it can be cold outside. It can be 29 degrees outside, but it goes back to what you said. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to be sour about it and upset? Or are you going to be like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy as much as I can, regardless of the circumstances.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's good. So at what point in your life, because I know that, I'm sure most authors, this was inspired by something that might have happened, in your life. So at what point did you decide for yourself that you could no longer live cold, as you'd say? And when did you make that shift?
Well, it was almost like a slow drip. I can't put my finger on one moment where there was an aha moment. It was just an accumulation of living life and going through the ups and downs. I had a business, some called it an empire, which was bankrupted. I've been through a divorce. I dealt with drug addiction and these things, and these different tragedies or traumas that happened to me in my life. They reached a point where I started looking back at them and looking at where I was and seeing a direct correlation between the growth and success that I had in the current moment and how integral those things were in developing the qualities and traits and fortitude and strength and perseverance and persistence and all the other things that went into my success came from these traumas. And so then the philosophy became in my mind, were these really traumas or did I misidentify them at the same time? And, looking back at everything, I could say 100% of the traumas in my life were actually blessings in retrospect. And so
I was going to say, get into that phrase, because that's good.
Yeah. So then my quest began to help others to see this, because as a trainer, I was a stress relief coach all along. Just I wasn't titled that, but I was seeing that I was helping people read and see the same type of things in their situations. Mm-hmm. And my quest became to find the good or God in everything and to close the gap. And so instead of having to look back in retrospect and go, oh yeah, that was a great thing that happened and it really led to me where I am now, to staring circumstances in the face as they are occurring and going, okay, this has always turned out to be a blessing in the past. Mm-hmm. I know it's going to be now. How can I change my frame of mind and view this differently right now so I don't experience the same levels of stress, anxiety, fear, and all the other negative emotions that come along with those situations, and turn them into a feeling of peace, if not hope and joy, that this was creating something wonderful in me, even if I didn't know what it was at the time. So in my book, I talk about one of the most important things people can do, because it's hard. It's like, this took me 25 years to be in a situation now where, you know, my daughter calls me the Buddha just because I just stay even. It's like, mm-hmm. you got to get yourself to the place of, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. I can't, I'm not strong enough. I'm not wise enough. I'm not practiced enough to see that there's beauty in this yet. But experience tells me that there's beauty here, but I can't see it and understand it. I don't know what this means, but I have, and then it goes to faith, but I have faith that God is working here and something good is coming of this for me. And then once I can get myself into that mindset, even if I can't tell what the true blessing is, which I'm pretty good at reframing and seeing and looking at, you know, 3, 4, or 5 possible positive blessings in the negative situation.
Yeah.
I can rest in the peace of, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So, okay, I do have a side question off of that. And I know this is something like I didn't write down or anything for us, but how would you say for the listeners tuning in that you can decipher that something might be a potential blessing? Because we have the power of choice. Mm-hmm. And then, or that I'm going to choose not to take this. Because you know what I mean? Like someone could just be like, okay, I'm going to choose everything, knowing that it's all going to work together for my good, or using wisdom to say, this is probably going to be for my better good on this end versus this.
So just making a choice.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it goes to your feeling and what feels best and what feels most natural and what feels most aligned with what you want your life to be as it relates to your core values. And like, you know, that's some of the work I do with people is like, they are not clear on what their core values are. And therefore they're not as clear about what their purpose and what the meaning of their life is, though they have a sense of it.
Yeah.
But getting clear about that aspect of you really helps you to decide what's the best course of action, because it's aligned with who it is you are authentically.
That's really good.
And you can feel it. You can really feel it. You can and really a lot of times it becomes really clear, because it's a lot of times it's a choice between, okay, I should do this because mom, dad, cousin Betty, TV, society, the culture, America thinks that I should do this, but it doesn't feel right. And on the other side going, I was born to do this and it's going against what everybody's telling me. Well, we kind of know what the real good decision should be. But so many times people take that other path that's dictated by exterior sources, mom, dad, brother, society. And then years, weeks, months, years, decades later, they feel stuck in a place. They feel empty and they're trying to go, okay, well, this doesn't feel right. I need to be doing something else because this isn't it. And then we explore and find and do some digging and searching, and we decide, okay, this was based on a decision that wasn't authentic to who you are in the first place. And you spent this time doing it because it became comfortable.
Ooh.
Even though it didn't feel great. It felt bad, but it felt comfortable. And so the courage to make the changes was slow to come.
Oh, that's good. Oh my gosh. I just feel like, I don't know. I just went to church, but it was a motivational speech.
Great.
But no, but I appreciate that you went into that, especially because this season is talking about shifting out of shock and shifting out of that stuck place. And really, in what you just said, it's saying that sometimes we can be in that stuck place because we chose things that aren't aligned with our purpose.
Yes. Well, that is absolutely correct. And when we look at when I deal with people, when I'm coaching them, and we're either moving into inner peace, or we're moving out of stress, or we're trying to move through some anxiety or some challenge or some obstacles, a lot of times, and the majority of the time, the thing that's causing stress is something that the person has created themselves. Mm-hmm. There was no exterior source or exterior power that has put them in a box. They put themselves in the box, and they think that they're stuck in the box. But part of the beauty of it is and what if you can't take anything else from this, realize that we created the box. We have the power to get ourselves out of the box and create the type of life that we would desire, that contains inner peace, joy, purpose, fulfillment, happiness, love, and all of those beautiful things, if we just commit to it and take the steps consistently and persistently until we get there.
That's good. And honestly, we do it in a physical sense, but we don't always do it in a emotional or a mental sense, because as soon as you started giving the whole box idea, I just thought about like a baby in a crib. And naturally, as a baby grows, eventually that baby tries to climb and to get out of that crib. And, the first few times they don't succeed because, if it's still learning how to crawl and maybe it doesn't fully know how to walk yet, it might just reach on the sides or reach on the handles. But then as it grows and it goes from crawling to climbing and walking, it gets itself out of the crib. And next thing you know, parents wake up and they're like, why is my child in my room? Why aren't you in your crib? But essentially, we do that naturally. All of us at some point in some way have done that, but we don't do it in an emotional sense, mentally, honestly, even sometimes physically. Again, in our adulthood, we don't get ourselves out of that box because we don't think that we can, when in reality, we always have been able to.
Right.
Man.
Yes.
Okay, so I gotta get to our next question, because you keep hinting at this and I'm like, oh, this just goes right into it. So you keep talking about peace, and you're like cultivating inner joy, peace, and purpose, and everything that your book talks about, as well as what you represent in your brand. Can you tell us about your 5 daily practices guaranteed to set a tone of inner peace?
Guaranteed. 5 practices. First practice, first thing, and again, it's going to start first thing in the morning, is make sure, and if you're not doing this already, give yourself some time to just reflect, meditate. I say meditate, and my practice is to meditate. But it doesn't have to be meditation if that's not your thing. Now, just a little plug, you can go to my website and just do a 10-minute meditation just to walk you through meditation if you're not familiar with it. It's just a guided meditation just to clear your mind, get you centered, and get you ready for the day. Just so you immediately set your day where you're shutting down your mind's tendency to chatter at you about all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so once you do that, you want to run through your day. It just briefly, whether it's work or it's just errands or, meetings or big proposal or what, just plot out in your mind, and you can, do this consciously with a pad if you want to, and just write down, or I have a day timer, so my day is usually planned out in my phone calendar where I know everything that's going on, and just kind of go through all those things to understand how the day is going. And then the third part of that is to set a positive expectation or intention for all of the activities you have coming up. And set gratitude for the activity and send gratitude to all of the people that you're going to encounter in those activities. And this is especially important if you have challenging people or people who you don't like or don't like you. Send them gratitude for the part that they're playing in your life to bring you that much closer to peace, regardless of the circumstances. Because the fact of the matter is, they don't have power over you unless you give it to them. And if you approach them energetically with that state of appreciation, gratitude, and maybe even a little bit of reverence, watch how your relationship starts to shift with them.
That's good.
Yeah, I got a couple more.
Oh, you're good. Okay.
So then when you get into the day, try to steal away 10, 15 minutes in the middle of the day, in the afternoon sometime, just to go back, reset, reassess, meditate, get quiet, silence the chatter, and then reset those positive expectations for the rest of the day. And finally, when you get to the end, reassess, just kind of reset at the end of the day, like right before bed. At bedtime, stretch, do something physical, maybe, something just to loosen up your body. My routine is to stretch because it helps me sleep better, because I work out a lot because I'm a trainer, obviously, and I'm really active. So my body really wants to be loosened up before bed. And at that same time, I assess the day, what went right, what went wrong, and just let it go and get ready for the next day. Now I'm going to throw in a couple like bonuses there, and that's do something physical. Try to do something physical every day, whether it's a walk, a hike, a bike ride, a swim, just anything. And really, if you can get around trees or the outdoors in some way or fashion, it doesn't have to be like in the wilderness on a hike, but they've done psychological studies on even urban areas and shown the levels of contentment and peace in urban areas that have trees are higher than urban areas that don't have trees and greenery. And so just to be around greenery and trees outside and just relishing and reflecting on that part of nature helps you to reset your mindset. So be active, do something active every day, and try to be in nature in some way, whether it's just a park or whatever, every day.
Wow. That is so good. And it was a lot wrapped up in all of that. But I have to go back to your very first statement, and especially when you were talking about sending appreciation and gratitude. So can you give us like a real life example of that? Like, let's say I go to work every day and I don't like my boss. So how would I go about like setting my day before I go into the job based on what you just said?
Okay, so there's a lot there. So if I was working with you, I would first establish, are you in that box because of a decision you made long ago, and you're kind of stuck in this box with a boss who's not the best for you? You know what I mean? And so once you establish that, and maybe, okay, let's decide that you are in the right industry, you're in the right job, it's just a personality thing with your boss. Right. That's not working. So just acknowledge that your boss is going to be your boss, and what they do is going to affect kind of what's going on around you, but it doesn't necessarily have to affect your frame of mind, because you still are there, especially if you are in a job that gives you level of purpose and contribution, and you know you're doing good, both for your family and for the betterment of the planet and for the betterment of the company and everything else, then you can center yourself in that purpose and just deal with your boss as one of the challenges that you have to navigate along the way. Now, then there's also pieces of, coaching through, do we need to schedule a talk with the boss to really be open and honest about what's going on with you and how you perceive they're treating you? Because, that courage to take the steps to protect yourself is important. And what's also important, and people think inner peace, and it's almost like they feel it as a passive state, when inner peace a lot of times comes from our ability to and our courage to take actions in the direction that's in our best interest. So, and that you'll see that, back to your question and answering it directly around all that, when you start saying, okay, I understand, and let's go way back to me saying that 100% of my circumstances were actually blessings when they felt like challenges to begin with. That includes this boss who's challenging me right now. That in some way, this boss is blessing me. And if I can bring that mindset to myself and know every time that they're doing whatever they are doing that's getting under my skin, and I can reset myself and say, okay, this is triggering me. What do I need to work on in me so that that trigger doesn't happen? Is there really a weakness that I need to work on that they're doing? And I can work on that and become stronger, and that weakness becomes a strength. Yeah. Or is it just their personality is off and I can strengthen my interpersonal skills and my ability to deal with challenging people and challenging situations, which further makes me a stronger individual? When you start to approach your boss that way, you come across to them a different way. And I'm not going to guarantee it, but I'm going to say, you got a 75% chance that over time, they are going to start dealing with you differently because of your ability to deal with them differently and absorb without internalizing what they're dishing out.
No, that's good. And I like that you gave the like 75% or 70%, like, that they might start dealing with you differently. But here's what, to me, I would say is guaranteed. Even if they don't start dealing with you differently, people around you will, because they will see, okay, you know what? She's not coming in here with an attitude. Your work, you're actually showing up, and it'll show in your work, in your character, that then even if your boss doesn't vouch for you, and I can say this just speaking on behalf of friends and different scenarios, perhaps their boss will, because they might come in and see how you're treating your boss. And maybe your boss is just a hard person to work with in general across all the board. But, if their boss comes in and they're saying, man, this is a good employee, despite their boss treating them this way, or, maybe your peers in different positions see that, and you never know how it'll work in promotion or reward or on down the line, or even people willing to speak of your character on your behalf in the future. So
exactly. That's perfect.
That's really good. And I love how you even talked about taking action. That is something I had to learn myself, taking action for my own inner peace. And I learned that actually from therapy and coaching. And so I love, because you're a stress relief coach, that you're saying this, but it's so true. And mine, for me, it was always with relatives. And sometimes I even still struggle with it, because I'm like, well, should I do this? Should I say this? Should I not? And at the end of the day, I had to decide, okay, but I'm the one wrestling with it. They're not. And sometimes they often never even know that I'm wrestling with it if I don't address it, if I don't take action, if I don't do any of those things. And so I know in this series, we're talking about helping people get out of that stuck place, and shifting out of shock. And sometimes, if not all the time, it's going to require you to take action in whatever way.
Action, and don't forget, and I would say this to every being listening or watching right now, that within you is the power, and you are probably more powerful. Even if you think that you're powerful, you're still probably more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And when you take that power and put it in action, great things happen. And then what happens is that you develop this cultivation of an attitude that you are responsible for everything that occurs to you, and you feel like a true creator of your reality. And you know that when things come at you, it's almost like you become a wizard or a magician, where you can shift it. And I talk about this in the book. It's like that a lot of people, and I have clients, especially some of my personal training clients, that they will talk about situations and challenges and problems. And immediately, like I said, I become just a master at reframing and seeing a negative outcome that's going on right there. And it's almost like I am living in an alternate reality. It's like, yeah, because that is the reality that I have created. It is a, with all of its ills out there, it is a positive world that we live in. And we have the power to make that, spread it.
Yeah. No, that's good. Wow. So keeping on this subject, when you talked about these 5 practices daily will guarantee inner peace, what guarantees that? Like, what makes you say, okay, I'm guaranteed that this is going to produce inner peace?
Okay, we can rewind 30 seconds, because the more you practice that, the more you create that other reality that's positive, and the ability to, the one thing that I left out is, and I have to throw this on there, the word is serendipity. And, there's planning. And then, so I've got 2 nieces, and I just saw them in Detroit. And excuse me on this tangent, but the story just is going to illustrate. So one of my nieces is totally flighty, like my mom was. And she's like, oh, I'm not worried about anything. The universe is going to take care of it all. To the point where she doesn't plan. I mean, she just walks out the door, and wherever she ends up that day is how it was supposed to be. The universe has guided her every step. Now, conversely, she has a sister who is very controlling and wants to plan every minute and every minute detail of everything. And when it comes out of place, she is supremely disturbed. And so you got polar ends. And so somewhere,
the parents.
right. So somewhere in the middle is where peace lies, truly, because we need to plan to do stuff. I mean, you couldn't have a show if you didn't make plans and take steps and, just work through logistics of things.
Exactly.
But, and you know this, and I know this, stuff happens. And so sometimes the day gets blown completely 100 miles off course of where you thought it was going. You have to learn to embrace and accept that, along with that whole theory that there is some power that's in charge, that has our best at hand. And when we adapt and go with that, we're going to end up in the place that we are supposed to be. Now, back to guaranteeing inner peace. When you adapt that mindset that is flexible enough to see those things that happen as curveballs, as just part of the process, and you just take them on and you embrace them instead of resisting them, then you can't have anything but peace with everything that happens. Now, it's not going to be a snap in the finger a lot of the time. It takes practice. I mean, just like if you learn how to play tennis, or if you learn how to write, if you learn how to do a podcast, or whatever you're doing, it takes you time, and there's going to be a learning curve. And again, it took me 25 years to get to the place where I'm not shaken by, yeah, I'm a human, so I get shaken by some things, but I'm generally pretty even and peaceful regardless of what happens. I mean, funny and ironically, I'm a big sports fan, and the thing that pisses me off most, and I told my daughter, is when my team was behind and losing the game, and I'm screaming at the television, and that's the big deal. So, but again, that's put in perspective, and it's really not a life-changing situation.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I mean, I guess when we do think about sports, because recently I was helping at my church and we had Vacation Bible School, and the theme was like running your race. And one of the days we were talking to the kids about like obstacles and hurdles, but essentially not allowing them to stop them from running their race. And I think that goes in hand with what you're saying. It's like the reason why it guarantees is because things are always going to come. Every day there's going to be some change, some obstacle, something that's thrown our way, but you have to realize, okay, I'm going to keep going, or it's a hurdle, I'm just going to jump over it and I'm going to keep going. Not like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world, I'm just going to stop my race.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's really good. Okay. So I know in our one-on-one you mentioned, and you have mentioned it on here too, that you are a stress relief coach. So being that this season is talking about helping shift people out of shock and out of that stuck place, and I know we've been talking about it throughout the entire episode, but what would you say about like to someone who's in that stuck place? And then would you say that it's stress that gets us here? And if so, how would you suggest that they get out of it?
Well, that's a good question. So I think that stress is a byproduct, not the thing. So the stress comes about because we are not accepting of a situation that we're in, and we feel stuck or pressed about it, or it could be a time constraint, or it could be that we're in the wrong career, or it could be we're in a stressful, strained relationship. And in all of those cases, the first thing is assess what is actually going on with us that got us in this situation in the first place. And that's very important, because if we don't acknowledge that and recognize that and break it apart, then we're likely to put ourselves in that situation again once we get out of it. And so to kind of diagnose that is very important. And then the second part of it is just making sure we realize that we have the power to change our situation, that we are ultimately and infinitely creative, and we create it more 9 times out of 10. And I'm not talking about situations where there's abuse and a real victim where you need to get help with the situation, right. But in situations where we have put ourselves in stressful situations that we have some control over, we put ourselves there, we can get ourselves out of those situations. And then we talked about it before. It's like action is the great equalizer. Because if you think about it, when you're taking the action towards the thing that's taking you out of the stress, even getting to the destination sometimes doesn't feel as good as the actions that we're actively taking and the feeling we get from just taking the actions to remove ourselves from the situations. And sometimes the action is as simple as just sitting down and writing a list, or, setting a goal, or talking to somebody that can help you get clarity and strategize which direction you can go in. Those simple things are often very uplifting. And in that uplifting, we find the peace that's within us and the joy to follow what our purpose and what our meaning is, which, in a lot of cases, when we are in purpose and meaning, there can be challenges and things that come and get in our path, but they're just that, they're challenges and obstacles. And we don't let them disturb our peace, because there's something that is so important that we're working towards, again, in action, that we remain in peace, even though we have to work through a challenge.
No, that's good. Honestly, I 100% agree with everything that you said. And as you were talking through that process, it made me think about myself and just what I experienced going through the process myself, and getting myself out of that stuck place, because initially I was able to stop and dissect and be like, okay, how did I get here? But then once I did that, it's like oftentimes people, and I know a few listeners are more than likely here in this spot. It's like you realize how you got there, but then you don't see how to get out. And you're like, yeah, I know, man, I was placed in this family environment, or I was placed in this financial circumstance. And you just see all of the problems and you're like, okay, well, that makes sense as to how I got here. But if you don't see the way out, you'll just stay stuck there. But the action, and realizing that I had the power. So the action that I took, for me, it was literally just scheduling one session with the counselor. Mm-hmm. And after that one session, even during that one session, it was so uplifting. But I was like, I walked away from it, and I was on the phone with one of my close relatives, and I was like, nothing changed. Like, the circumstances are still here, but I feel really good. And that conversation and that action reminded me that I did have the power. I did have control, and even my therapist was saying, why don't you re-strategize and do this differently and take action? But if I hadn't have done that one action, then I would have remained in that stuck place.
Right. You brought up something that's very, very important. I'm glad you reminded me. And this is the other thing. And this is going to be very important for your listeners as well. A lot of times when we encounter a challenge or something that's causing us stress and anxiety, what we do is we focus on that thing. We focus on that thing, and then it grows, and we focus on it some more, and it gets bigger. And the more we look at it, the more we feel it, the more we focus on it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and overwhelming. Yeah. And then some trigger happens, and we're able to find a catalyst to get us to go the other way. But while we're going the other way, taking action, we're still thinking about the problem. When the mindset shift that is ultimately important is to focus on what you do want and the situation and circumstances that you do want to create. So, whether it's a new job or whether it's like, to bring up your example before with the boss that you're not getting along with. So instead of focusing on my boss is a jerk, he treats me terribly, the thought becomes, I can create a better relationship with this boss. And I see my boss realizing my value, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that is a likelihood. And so you start to visualize the potential positive relationship that you have with your boss instead of the negative relationship that you are currently experiencing. And that's with, job change, it's with relationships, it's with, creating financial abundance, it's with creating good health and, maybe losing weight or getting healthier or more fit. It's like you envision the body that you want to have and how good it's going to be feeling in that body, and not looking at yourself going, oh, my butt's too big.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And even to take it a little bit more personal, because I've talked about this on an episode that I was on someone else's podcast for, and I was a guest. My parents were divorced, and oftentimes I go back, and for a while I would struggle with thinking of, man, I didn't have this childhood where both of my parents were in the home, and, this parent picked me up from school versus this parent. And I would often replay that. Like, even when I saw the little videos where, parents go surprise kids or whatever, and I would often replay myself in that past and, find it overwhelming, frustrating, and making it bigger and bigger and bigger, like you said. And then I just had to realize, okay, set yourself on the future. And what do you want now? And I know, okay, now I want a relationship with all my parents. And now I have 4 because, people have remarried. And I'm like, I want a relationship with all of them, bonus parents included. And I do what it takes to foster that. But if I would have stayed in that past mindset, I wouldn't have been able to have that love, joy, and peace inside of myself. And then even with everyone across the board, I would have still been holding resentment towards one parent versus the other. And then also carrying that onto my bonus parents or everything, when it's like, okay, just change your mindset to what it is that you want, like you said. And then even to think farther, because that's my present, but then I think in my future, okay, what do I want my children to see and them to witness? So definitely always think about not the problem, but the solution and the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause, Eric, before we come back for our last question. This has been so good. But we have a quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode of The Shift is sponsored by the Ultimate Faith Store. This store carries faith-based apparel and accessories for men, women, and children. Their foundation scripture is Matthew 17:20, which reads, "Faith can move mountains." Up to 15% of all purchases are donated to charities, small communities, and people in need around the world. To purchase an item from the Ultimate Faith Store, please use the link attached to this episode and the code JCamille for 10% off. Now, back to you, Jay. Okay, Eric, so it's time for our last question. I always get so sad because I'm like, I love when I'm having like great dialogue with the guest, and this has been so great. And then I'm like, man, we're about to depart and we're about to leave our listeners. And that means we won't be able to talk anymore. But but no, what 3 tips or pieces of advice would you give to a listener tuning in today?
3 tips. Well, we went through how to guarantee the best day. And so I'm not going to recap those. I'm going to kind of summarize the mindset shifts that I think are most important. And the first is to, if you are a faith-based person, and that whether it's you believe in the Mother Nature or you're Christian or whatever your faith is, truly believe that. If you truly believe that and believe the power of the creator that you have, then that's a big step. And that's part of the foundation that my book works on. And it's not denominational, but there is a higher power that is guiding our path and helping us to grow and become our best selves so that we can make the contribution we are meant to make. And if you believe that, truly believe that. And then step 2 would be that when you encounter a situation and a challenge that you just cannot reframe and see the positive or the good that is working, that I'm going to take a big step out and guarantee you that it's working in your behalf, then try to bring yourself to, I don't know what this means. And if you can get to, I don't know, but I trust that something good is happening for me, then that really puts you at ease.
Yeah.
And then finally is realize that your power in connection with that divine power, and take action, realizing that you are the ultimate creator of your reality. And I just want to go back to, like, I just did a book club, and one of the young ladies was talking about one of the challenges she was encountering in losing a job. And it was really stressing her out. She was worried about bills. She was a single mom, and just a lot going on. And the main thing she said she took from the book was her being able to bring herself to, I don't know what this means. I don't know, but I trust that it's good. And then she recapped with me later on and helped catch me back up to how it turned out. And as it turned out, the job that she got subsequent to losing her other job was more in line with what she wanted to do. It was a lot more money, full benefits, with the time that she needed to spend with her son. And so, on one hand, you lose a job and immediately we go to stress, like, oh my God, I lost my job. How am I going to make it? No.
Yeah.
Off to the races. But when you come to, I don't know, and then you fast forward to what's possible, her situation could not have been better than when she lost her job. So those are the three things I'm going to leave them with.
Woo, that's good. And honestly, even with the last scenario that you just harped on, you know, about the lady who lost her job, if she had probably not lost her job, she probably wouldn't have been there because she wouldn't have been looking for something else. So sometimes, you know, those things that we consider a setback is a setup for where we're supposed to be.
And not to mention that it was a job she probably wasn't that wild about in the first place.
Wow. That was good. Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. Okay, so please tell us how we can stay connected with you, where we can follow you, where we can get your book. We just want to be able to stay connected and support you.
So the easiest way to get to my website and to my Facebook page and everything is innerpeacetoday.com. There you'll find links to click to my Facebook page and like me on Facebook and follow all the inspirational quotes and blog posts and videos that I post there. I do have guided meditations and videos and things on my website as well, just as a free resource. If you need help in that way, you can also contact me if you want a free session just to work through where you're at and where you need to get to and set a strategy. I encourage you to go to innerpeacetoday.com and then also buy the book. The book is just a good how to live a life of peace manual that's available on Amazon.com. And there should be a link that I think you'll show them later on. And if there's not a link there, there's also a link to my book at the website innerpeacetoday.com.
Awesome. Sounds great. So yes, like you mentioned, I do have your links that I will definitely be attaching to this episode on our lives, as well as on Apple, Google, Spotify, anywhere we share the episode to. I'll put out the links to get his book as well as to stay connected on his website. So again, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you for your time today on The Shift. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode. And I will see you all next Sunday. Have a great, if you're celebrating Independence Day, have a wonderful Independence Day. Enjoy some fireworks with loved ones, or just enjoy relaxing. Enjoy a nice day off. I know I am. All right. I'll see you all soon. From me, I'm Camille. Be sure to follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all next week.